If you are struggling whenever you get on a flat and you don't know where to start fishing, or if you've been fishing these flats for a while and you're looking for a different area to fish, in this video we're going to talk about that, and by the end of it you're going to have a better understanding on where to start and how to fish these areas. I was fishing with a local guide, Brinkley Peters, and we were having a conversation discussing some of the biggest struggles that new clientele and new members to Salt Strong has when it comes to fishing flats, and that's not knowing where to start. So I'm going to give you some prime examples on how to fish these types of areas. So the first type of area we're going to talk about is potholes on the grass flats and what to look for. So when you're fishing a grass flat, you want to look for grass that is broken up, about 50% sand and about 50% grass. You don't want to fish solid grass. Even though there might be some fish there, it's definitely more consistent whenever you're finding these potholes. So look for the potholes that are mixed in with that grass. And how you want to fish these potholes is first, you want to find the depth at which these fish are holding. A lot of times these fish are going to hold at a certain depth. It could be a foot, it could be 3 foot, it could be more or even less. But what you want to do is find that depth first. And a good place to start is look for wherever there's the most concentration of bait fish, but then you want to change your depth from deeper to shallow until you dial those fish in. Another thing that you want to do that's going to help you out is pay attention to which potholes are holding the fish. Sometimes there'll be singles or pairs up in these smaller potholes, and then sometimes they'll be grouped up in these larger potholes. Once you figured out what type of potholes these fish are in, you can eliminate a lot of water. First, you'll know what depth they're in, and second, you'll know the size of the potholes to concentrate on, and you can work a large area in a little bit of time once you have this knowledge. The next type of area Brinkley brought up was solid grass lines. That means grass lines that go from a transition of solid grass to sand, and it creates a sharp line. Now this is a great area for predator to patrol. They'll get right along this grass line and they'll move up and down. So fish like redfish, trout, flounder, and if you're in Florida, snook, they will patrol along these looking for any bait that's moving in and out of that grass. Now how I like to fish this is I like to position myself parallel to that grass line, and that way when I make that cast up and down that grass line, my lure is in the strike zone longer, because the fish are not necessarily going to be off in the sand, and a lot of times they're not going to be up on the grass itself. They'll be right along that edge, and being parallel to that grass line is going to be the best way to approach this. The next type of area that I want to talk about is shoreline vegetation, and that could either be mangrove shorelines or that could be even grass that's in a marsh. Now what we're looking for whenever we're fishing this type of shoreline is something that stands out. So either a point or a pocket or maybe even a laydown, something that's got a dead tree that fell over. These are perfect ambush spots, so you're looking for something that's a little bit different. So even a pocket that might only be a foot recessed in the mangroves or in this grass can be a spot where these fish are going to hold to hide, to ambush anything that's swimming by. Now how you're going to fish this is going to be dependent on the tides and how far back that these mangroves or this grass grows. If you're fishing a mangrove line that goes really far back, it's best to fish this during a lower tide cycle, because whenever there's a lot of water, this fish have a lot of area for them to go back underneath. Whenever the water falls out, it forces them to come out and they're easier to get to. Same thing with a grass line. If you're fishing a grass line that's sporadic and thin, whenever that water goes up, these fish can push really far back in there and you have to go back in there after them. But as that water falls, these fish are forced to come out to the edge of that grass line, and it makes them easier to catch. Now the time when this is going to be different is if that grass line is really thick and the fish aren't able to push back there, or if that mangrove line isn't very deep, then you can fish those at a higher tide cycle, and it actually gives the fish a place to pin their bait up against. It makes it easier to catch. So it really depends on how thick the mangrove line is and how thick that grass line is. Another place to look for is any type of drop off or anything that's a little bit deeper than the surrounding area. So a drop off along the edge of a flat or even a little bit of a trough along that flat is a great place to look, especially during the lower tide cycles. As that water falls out, these fish don't want to travel very far, so they're going to go to the nearest drop off and they'll hang out there, and a lot of times that's where they're going to feed. So just little impressions that might be 6 inches deep or maybe even a foot deeper than the surrounding area is a great place to look on lower tide cycles. But once that water starts to come in on an incoming tide, they'll start moving back up closer to that shoreline in that vegetation. Now, a prime example of how to fish this was whenever I was with Brinkley, we were fishing the first drop off of a flat, and we were far away from the shoreline. We were probably 300 yards from the shoreline during low tide, but that's where the fish were. Matter of fact, Brinkley actually caught a slam in quick order fishing this way, but as soon as that water started coming in, it was time to move up closer to the shore. As always, it is a good idea to watch the bait. Whatever that bait is doing, you can bet that the fish are not going to be far behind. Now, as far as what lures to use whenever you're fishing this way, first thing in the morning, it's hard to beat a topwater. You can cast them far, you can cover a lot of water, and they're great search baits. But as that sun comes up, it really depends on what the wind is doing. If you're fishing, a good wind that's got some ripple in the water or even a stiff breeze, you'll probably want to throw something that's going to put a vibration off, so a nice paddle tail is a good way to go. But if it's calmer out there, if the wind is laid down a little bit, then you want to fish slow and you want to fish on the bottom. So something like a prawn or a prawn junior fished on the bottom, or even a tweaker, is going to be a safer bet. Now, if you want firsthand experience and learning how to do this, I highly recommend joining a local chapter and getting with some other members that are good at this, and you can learn from them, or you can even hire a guide like Brinkley. You can check him out at his website at baywadeguide.com. I'll put the link for that down below, or just direct message him in the community because he is an insider. His name is Brinkley Peters. So I hope this video was helpful. If you've got any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.